When it comes to holiday gift giving, I want to give things people really love. Beautiful, timeless pieces they'll wear for years. That's why I'm going with Quince. From Mongolian cashmere sweaters to Italian wool coats, Quince offers premium quality at a price that works for my holiday gift-giving budget. The only problem I'm having is deciding between Quince's beautiful home goods, jewelry, accessories, bags, and clothing. There are so many options, you'll definitely find something for everyone on your list. Oh, and I should mention their adorable kids and baby clothes and their holiday PJs, which will look great in your holiday photos. Every piece is made with premium materials from ethical, trusted factories and priced far below what other luxury brands charge. Find gifts so good you'll want to keep them with Quince. Go to quince.com/POTC for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/POTC to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/POTC.
Energy is everything. Are we putting our energy in places that drain us? Are we putting our energy in places that are rejuvenating to us? And much of us are being pushed around by three things when we're deciding how to use our energy. You know, we're pushed around by the stories in our mind. We're pushed around by what we don't want to feel. And we're pushed around by trying to control life. And so wise effort is disentangling from all of that. Are we using our energy in the wisest ways? And if we all do that, I think our world could be a little bit of a better place.
That was Dr. Diana Hill on Psychologists Off the Clock.
We are 5 experts in psychology here to bring you cutting-edge and science-based ideas to help you flourish in your relationships, work, and health.
I'm Dr. Debbie Sorensen, a clinical psychologist practicing in Mile High, Denver, Colorado, author of Act for Burnout and Act Daily Journal.
From America's Heartland, I'm Dr. Emily Edlin, a clinical psychologist based in Chicago, Illinois, and author of Autonomy Supportive Parenting.
Calling in from Vienna, Austria, I'm Michael Harold, ACT coach, confidence trainer, and the author of an upcoming book on developing your confidence and social skills.
From Boston, I'm Dr. Yael Schoenbrunn, faculty at Brown University and author of Work, Parent, Thrive, and an upcoming book about misunderstanding.
And from coastal New England, I'm Dr. Jill Stoddard, author of Be Mighty, the Big Book of Act Metaphors, and Imposter No More.
We hope you take what you learn here to build a rich and meaningful life.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock.
Hey listeners, just a super quick reminder that you can listen to the podcast ad-free by supporting us on Patreon for just $5 a month. Or you can support the podcast with a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you to everyone who's already supporting us.
Hi everyone, this is Michael. I'm sitting here with Yael to discuss my interview with Diana Hill and her book Wise Effort. So Yael, tell me what your thoughts on my discussion with Diana were.
Well, I first just have to say how lovely it is to have her back on the show. For longtime listeners, you'll know that Diana was a podcast founder, and I love her voice. I love her laugh. Her laugh is so distinctive, and it just warms my heart. And I love her wisdom, and I'm just so impressed by all the things that she's accomplished in the past couple of years. She's so productive. 4 books. This is her 4th, and teaching therapists and spreading her wisdom. And there's so much that's beautiful about this conversation. But one of the central themes is something that I think a lot about, which is finding the middle path of using your genius, in her words. But this is something that I think about in terms of the Aristotelian mean. It's sort of like
the what?
The Aristotelian mean. This was something I talked about with Barry Schwartz on our episode on practical wisdom, which is when there's something good, we can go too far or not far enough. And so the wisdom is to find the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is located through experience, through understanding of context, through understanding of our values, through knowing the science, right? All of these different things that help us find the sweet spot of knowing how to proceed in a way that works well for us. And so she's talking about it using Buddhism and ACT. And then there's the way of looking at it from Aristotle. So maybe we can link to that episode with Barry Schwartz. But I think that that's such an important thing to recognize, is that even with the good things, like the qualities that you're most proud of, we need to be wise about how we deploy them.
Aristotelian mean. I feel like this is something I should be in my Tinder profile. That makes me sound like very sophisticated. I learned this week, the word parenthetically. And I thought, this is just so me. This describes my life. Interesting. Yeah, we should totally link to that.
Yeah, check out Barry Schwartz's book, Practical Wisdom, too. But Michael, I wanted to talk to you about your experience with Diana's book, because I know that you were actually involved in it in a really special way. So I wonder if you can share a bit about how that came about and what contributions you made.
Yeah, so this book is actually really close to my heart, or the story leading up to the book, because Diana was a co-host on the show, and I consider her a dear friend and colleague. And she invited me a while ago to come on her podcast. And she said, we're going to make it a real play. So that sounded like maybe you throw anything at me that has the word play in it, and I'm intrigued. And I knew what I was getting into. The idea with the real play was that we would do a therapy session or a coaching session, something where we work through the problem that I was facing. And I am oftentimes vulnerable to a fault. I've learned to not share everything all the time online, but I've also learned that sharing and talking about one's struggles, like Jill likes to say, sunshine is a really good disinfectant. And I always think that if I'm struggling with something or working through something, maybe other people can learn from it. So anyway, I was game for Diana's real play. And we had this really deep conversation that I still consider to be one of the most insightful conversations that I had that year. It really did a big mindset shift in like my head, did this really like 180 of looking at something completely different. This was a massive struggle I had been facing for a long time. And she just put this twist on it. And the connection to the book, and Diana will hopefully excuse me if I don't get this 100% right, but in my memory, she asked me afterwards if I would be willing to have this mentioned in the book as well. And I say, I'm fine with it. I hope people can learn from it. And then this really cute thing happened where a few months later, her mom had apparently read the first draft of the book, and Diana sent me an email and she said, my mom wants to know, how is Michael doing? So I'm asking you. And I wrote her a paragraph back and I told her how this has changed and what I'm doing differently now. And she said, oh, this is so nice. Can I put that in the book as well? And I'm not exaggerating when I said that this was such an impactful shift for me. I will say that everyone's invited to listen to the interview. It's in the show notes, but I would also leave you with the exercise that Diana walked me through to facilitate that change. When I was talking with her about the struggle that I was facing and the time frame I was dealing with, she said, okay, Michael, assume it's the end of the time frame and you're writing an Amazon review. How many stars? And it's horrible to say Amazon review. Like there are reviews everywhere. But imagine like one of those, like 5-star, how many stars would you give and what would the review say? And I wrote a really devastating review. When I say wrote, I mean in the podcast, I talked about a really devastating 2-star review. And then we talked through the problem. And she said, okay, Michael, I think you're ready to write a 5-star review. Like, what would it look like if at the end of that time frame, you walked out of this with a 5-star review? What would that review say? It's a very behavioral approach. It's a very activating approach to it. And it's like hidden nicely in this metaphor of a review. And I can say that this 5-star review that I've, in air quotes, written then verbally, was something that I'm still living like every day up until now. And I intend to keep going with it. And now I think I left a lot of like open things there that people are still wondering, like, what is this guy rambling on about? If you think I'm rambling on about stuff, welcome to my life. This is how I roll. But you are very invited to listen to the interview and get all the gist on it. And that is why like this was such an important book for me to discuss. And I was really happy that Diana could make the time to jump on the call and chat with me yet again.
Yeah. Well, I think Diana does have a way of getting, she actually once, I remember, described it as like going right for the emotional jugular. Like she gets right to the heart of things and she has such a clarity and such a wisdom about her. So I know people will get so much from her book and from this conversation that you had with her.
Well, then I hope you all enjoy my discussion with Diana Hill. Today I'm speaking to someone with whom our longtime listeners will be very familiar. I have Dr. Diana Hill with me. Many of you will know her as a previous co-host of the show, and for those of you who don't know her yet, you've been missing out, so let me get you up to speed. Dr. Diana Hill is a clinical psychologist, an international trainer, and a leading expert on acceptance and commitment therapy. Drawing from the most current psychological research and contemplative wisdom, Diana bridges science with real-life practices to help people grow fulfilling and impactful lives. She's the author of 4 books, including I Know I Should Exercise But, the Self-Compassion Daily Journal, Act Daily Journal, and her latest Wise Effort, How to Focus Your Genius Energy on What Matters Most, which came out in summer of 2025. She's the host of the Wise Effort podcast, and her insights have been featured by NPR, Wall Street Journal, Psychology Today, Real Simple, and other national media. Diana, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here, Michael.
Last time we talked was nearly 2 years ago. So how have you been since then?
Oh, that's always such a big question. How are you supposed to answer that? How have you been for 2 years? Highs, lows, in-betweens. I think if anybody thinks about their life in the past 2 years, they could think about moments that were phenomenal, unexpected, noetic experiences of transformation, and then the daily grind that we're all in, and then the downs, So I think I've had all of it.
You were human for 2 years, basically.
Yeah, and being a human. Yeah.
So something that you've done in the meantime was you wrote a book about wise effort. And I want to pick your brain on all of that. The book is a beautiful mix of acceptance and commitment therapy and ancient Buddhist wisdom. And I just enjoyed it a lot. I journaled a lot. Your book is full of prompts to sit down and think over and write about. And I've spent a lot of time doing that. And I've learned a lot about myself and my, shall I say, unwise efforts at times. What made you write the book? What sparked that idea?
Well, this one has been long in the works. This is my 4th book. And the first few ones that I wrote were sort of following the trail of ACT, and then the trail of self-compassion, and then this movement book that got snuck in there because it was just a fun thing to write with somebody that I love. And but wise effort has always been there in the background. I'm fascinated about how we use our energy. And I think that energy is everything. Are we putting our energy in places that drain us? Are we putting our energy in places that are rejuvenating to us? And much of us are being pushed around by 3 things when we're deciding how to use our energy. We're pushed around by the stories in our mind. We're pushed around by what we don't want to feel. And we're pushed around by trying to control life. And so wise effort is disentangling from all of that. And it has been my own personal journey, as well as how I work with clients and how I train therapists. Are we using our energy in the wisest ways? And if we all do that, I think our world could be a little bit of a better place.
It's the holiday season, and in addition to the higher expenses that come this time of year, we also now have 2 kids who need braces, and it's already time to be registering for summer camps. Thankfully, we now use Monarch to keep on top of our expenses so we don't end up surprised or stressed out when it comes to our finances. If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code OFFTHECLOCK at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code OFFTHECLOCK.
I love learning. It's one of my favorite activities. And if you'd asked me what I would bring to a desert island, I would say, well, masterclass. Right now, I'm geeking out with the other co-hosts about their classes on writing. My personal favorite is Dan Brown's class on writing a thriller. I've read all his books. With Masterclass, you get thousands of bite-sized lessons across 13 categories that can fit into even the busiest of schedules. You can do what I do and turn your commute or workout into a classroom. With audio mode, you can listen to masterclass lessons anytime, anywhere, just like you do with this podcast. And if you're headed on a trip, you can download classes to watch offline and make the most of your travel time. It even works if you're headed to a desert island. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/POTC for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/POTC. masterclass.com/POTC. You have this Venn diagram that still sticks with me. It's like so salient in that book, and it combines the genius that I want to pick your brain on, and it combines that with wisdom. And then in the middle, it brings the overlap is the wise effort, which I thought so beautifully explaining the concept. Can we start by talking about what our genius is and how we can find it?
Well, this is the departure from ACT. You don't read about this in ACT stuff. And I got really interested in this concept of what I've coined genius energy, because what I started to do is think about how do I approach clients when they come into therapy with me. And they'll come in with their struggle, their problem, the samsara, the cycle that they're like constantly going through. But I can't help but see whatever human that's across the way from me, something about them that makes them, their strengths, their talents, their je ne sais quoi, and how their life force, that genius, is getting tangled up in their problems. So I really do think a good place to start for all of us when we're thinking about our energy is, am I using my genius? When you came on to Psychologist Off the Clock, Michael, as a co-host, you brought a genius energy to you, right? So there's unique aspects of Michael Harold that you bring to the podcast. There's a humor to you. There's like the superpower. It's a creative energy about you. And then you also have this capacity behind the scenes to be really super dialed in. And that was unique to you. And because you brought that, it leveled up the show. Everybody has genius qualities. And the way that I go about it in the book to start to uncover yours, because it's easier to spot them in others than ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Is through a psychological science lens. And what has psychological science told us about character strengths and aptitudes and flow states that come from doing what we're interested in. And when you can discover your genius, then things become easier. It's like you're not swimming upstream quite as much. You're going with the flow of what comes naturally to you. And that's been a lot of what I do in my life now. It's sort of the first question whenever someone asks me to do something. One of the first questions I ask is, does it use my genius? Is it something that comes easily to me? Or how could I put more of my unique talents and strengths into it so that my productivity is a little higher, my performance is a little better, because it's aligned with what I'm good at and who I am.
And you're absolutely right. It's so much easier to see it in other people. But I did take the time and really get out my journal and write about those questions you posed there, because I was really interested about this genius, the idea of just being aware of my strengths and making stuff easier for me by focusing on those strengths, and then, constantly working towards my weak spots, as if I had any, please. But I found a bunch of things that I did not think of when I thought about my own genius. So thank you for those insights. I will also, however, touch upon two that I think everyone who knows me is totally aware of. One is conscientiousness and the other is humor. And the thing with those two is that they're my fallback to anything that's difficult for me. Whenever I do something that is uncomfortable, there's something that I don't want to do. Like, how could I either add some conscientiousness here, or how could I add some humor to that? And then most of our listeners are somewhat suffering from the consequences of me adding that stuff in. But I've also noticed that, and you write about this in your book as well, that it can backfire if you're overdoing it. So I can get so conscientious on things that I'm 8 hours in a Google Sheet planning stuff out and tracking stuff without getting the work done. And I might also lean too much into humor and then not get the message across, because I'm so clinging to that safety behavior almost that is, also my strength. So we're overusing our genius at times Why do we do this? It's so annoying. It's so annoying when I do it. How do I stop doing that, Dr. Diana Hill?
Well, what you're alluding to is sort of this line of your genius is also your problem. In Buddhism, they call them near enemies. So the near enemy of compassion is pity. The near enemy of humility, like people that are super, super humble, and then they end up just always throwing themselves under the bus, right? So the use of humor is absolutely your genius. It's like it makes you shine. It attracts people to you. And it's the same thing that if you are using it because you're avoiding discomfort, or you're using it because it's the easier, softer path all the time, it can become your problem. Or sometimes you're underusing it. You're not using your genius because you don't value it. You can think about anyone, like your cousin, your best friend, your parent, and know what their genius is. Like my husband, he's a genius at patience. He's a math teacher. He can sit with a kid for hours. He's so incredibly patient. And that genius becomes a problem in our relationship when he's a little too patient with me. Sometimes I need to Diana, stop it. I need a little take me by the shoulders and give me a little shake, right? Because I'm just dominating, right? And he's so patient. So this is where we have to have that awareness of what are our strengths, but it doesn't end there. We need our strengths, that genius energy, to be directed with wisdom. And part of the wise effort method is getting curious. You start to get curious about what is my genius. Then you get curious about what are the things that throw it off track? What are my values? How do I want to guide it? And then what are also contextual factors? I'm super interested in process-based therapy and context. What are contextual factors that influence and impact my ability to use my energy in ways that are wise and how I want to, right? So you may go more towards humor when you're in a context where you feel a little bit more pressure, or you feel like you're put on the spot and you need to shift.
Hold on to something.
Yeah, hold on to something that you're good at, rather than using your humor intentionally and with wisdom.
So for those listeners who now think, how do I go about finding my genius? Like, what are these two talking about? Like we said, it's easy to see it in other people. It's more difficult to find it in us. When you work with clients, how do you guide them towards their own genius and clarifying that for themselves?
Oh, there's all sorts of questions you can ask yourself. Sometimes I'll do this when I'm doing workshops, like I'll train folks, leaders or therapists in workshops, and I'll have them mill about the room and ask each other questions like these ones. But you could ask yourself these questions. Questions like, when you were little and you got home from school, what were the things that you most wanted to do? Like, what were you interested in? For me, it was I used to want to go to the creek and walk along the creek and find little nasturtium flowers. What does that have anything to do with the genius? It has a lot to do with the genius. My genius is actually in connection to nature and emotional sensitivity, being able to see beauty in things and create beauty. I'd bring those little nasturtium flowers into my room and put them in little vases. When you were little, what were you drawn to? Some of your interests. What comes easily to you that doesn't seem to come easily to others? So those are some of your natural abilities and talents. Another great question to ask yourself, which has to do with your emotional intelligence, which is also part of your genius, is when you want to call someone, you have your group of friends, your Rolodex of 5 friends, and you're going to call this friend for this and that friend for that. I have one friend that I'll call when I'm in a fight with my husband, but it's a different friend that I'll call when I'm anxious about a big interview. What do friends call you for? What do they ask you for help for? And that taps into some of your genius. That's your emotional intelligence, how you show up for others in the emotional realm, which is just as important as your abilities and talents and skills. So genius isn't necessarily your IQ. We're not talking about your score on a Stanford Binet test here. The word actually comes from the Roman times. They talked about genius as being a spirit that traveled with you from home to home. And it was like a protector spirit. So, why are people calling you? What comes easily to you? And why are you naturally drawn to and interested in? Those are some good questions to start with.
Hey, it's Michael with a quick announcement. As you might have heard, I'm writing this book about building confidence and finding meaningful connections. Last year, I invited a small group of podcast listeners to be a part of that process. Back then, I thought this would be a one-time experiment. But we had so much fun and I got to meet so many awesome people that I'm doing it again this year. So if you're feeling stuck in your comfort zone, unhappy with your social life, or unsure how to really show up in conversations, I would love to help. we would work together one-on-one for 8 weeks to help you build the kind of confidence that actually lasts. And if you're up for it, I may include a few small moments from our work in my book, or completely anonymously, of course, to help others feel a little less alone in their own process. And as a thank you, I'm offering 50% off my coaching package. If this sounds like a fit, head over to herald.coach/book and get in touch. That's all. Back to the episode. I can imagine that people like thinking out loud about this will feel a little bit maybe bragging or showing off. And the beautiful thing here is you don't have to share that with anyone. You can be like very aware of your own genius and be very proud of it. And you don't have to get a t-shirt that has like printed on the front, like I'm the best at A, B, C. You can totally keep that to yourself. And people will probably pick up on your genius anyway.
Yeah. So I just interviewed Gabby Reese. She was like a supermodel / one of the most influential athletes in terms of beach volleyball player. And she's married to this big wave surfer, Laird Hamilton. So when I walked into their home, her genius was like all over the place. It was obvious in terms of her confidence, the way she held her body, the way that she welcomed me in and helped me feel comfortable. And yes, she doesn't have to say I'm a genius. She just lives it. And when you live it, people feel it. You become like an energetic force that people are drawn to. And many of us are playing, I got to say this, we play small.
Yes.
Because we're unwilling to just show up with what we've got. And it's not that you are better than anyone or that you're not as good as anyone. It's just you are you. Sort of like I'm in a oak grove here. Oak trees have a genius to them. They have a waxy leaves that protect them so that they don't lose a lot of water in the arid climate. They have this like thick bark for when fires come and they can get scorched and they don't get burned up. And the oak's genius comes from their hardship. So for many of us, those genius qualities, sure, we were born with our temperament and personality patterns and styles, but for many of us, our genius are an outgrowth of something that we went through that was difficult. Yep. So own it, use it, and offer it. That's sort of the message that I want to say. Sometimes we're a little bit too humble.
Yes, absolutely we are. Go out there, show people what you're good at and make their life better by doing so. However, we still have this thing about the overusing it, right? My question would be, knowing that sometimes they're underused, sometimes they're overused, how do we make this difficult call? What's a question to ask to see if we're maybe leaning towards in one direction or in the other? Connecting this to ACT, the question of, is this helpful, might come up. Is this workable? But do you have any other heuristics we can use to see if we need to dial up our genius or if we need to maybe dial it down a little bit?
Well, I'd mentioned this energy audit that I sometimes work with people on, where I said the first question that I ask myself is this using my genius? But that's only one of 4. I would say the next question to ask yourself is, does it align with my values? Which is very acty, right? What are your values? What's important to you in this moment? And then another question to ask yourself is really about your body. Like, is this a whole body yes or a whole body no? Your body has an understanding, an embodied understanding, interoceptive awareness of what is right for you, of maybe where you may be off track. And then the last question to ask yourself is this in the service of others, which is what you'd mentioned, because many people have genius qualities that are not in the service of others and that are in the service of just serving themselves. So those 4 questions, the energy audit, which I have like a whole worksheet on my website of how to do your own energy audit in the different domains of your life, of asking those big questions for yourself, can be really helpful in getting you kind of oriented moment to moment.
Then let's put that into the show notes. Let me ask you a question, because this is something that I've been pondering for a while now about the whole body yes and no. I find a lot of people tell me that, this is going to sound horrible, but this is how I work, that they listen to their body and they do what their body tells them to do. And I have to admit that maybe my body is a total idiot or a 3-year-old. I don't know. If I listen to my body, I seem to be doing a lot of really not so good stuff. Like if I listen to my body, I'm not working out. If I listen to my body, I'm eating French fries over vegetables. If I listen to my body, I find myself on the couch instead of in front of the laptop working. Maybe I'm asking the question the wrong way, or maybe I'm really just dealing with a 3-year-old that has the brain of a
I think
45-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the complaints that people have, especially psychologists have about things like intuition, right? So your embodied wisdom is not the end all be all. And that's why there's those other questions in there. You know, Jed Brewer talks a lot about this in Eat Right Now in terms of listening to the body and mindful eating. In the moment, yeah, you would choose to sit on the couch, or in the moment, you would choose to eat French fries. But if you really listen to your body, if you really pay attention to your body, it actually doesn't feel good to eat French fries and sit on the couch after over a point of diminishing returns. It feels good for a certain amount, but there's a point of diminishing returns. And this is actually what a lot of my master's research was in interoceptive awareness. And there's another wave of interest in interoceptive awareness, which is your ability to pay attention to what's happening physiologically inside of your body. And when we studied, for my master's thesis, I randomized people to either interoceptive awareness of their hunger and fullness, or using writing down like what you're eating, how much you're eating, keeping track of what you're eating. And the folks that had greater interoceptive, like were able to pay attention to their hunger and fullness, pay attention to that point of diminishing returns, pay attention to the worth it, not worth it, long term, not just short term. That's listening to your body. And those folks ended up having less disordered eating patterns. They ended up not binge eating as much, not overeating as much. And then later on, when I did research into actual treatment intervention studies, folks that had greater interoceptive awareness ended up being one of the mediating variables of outcome.
So the question I would be asking is not, hey, body, is this a yes or a no? But what are we thinking about this in the mid to long term? Like, I'm not asking what now, but I'm asking, how do we feel about this in the scope of a day, a week, a month, a year? And then take the answer from that question instead of the right here, right now. What are we feeling like doing?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a what are we feeling like doing? It's what do we know? Somebody will ask me to do something. Diana, will you be on an academic panel in November for blah, blah, blah? And I source lots of places to get my answer to that. First, I pause. This is a question of wise effort. Do I say yes to the panel? Right? And the question for the body is, does my body have a response to that initially? And sometimes it's hard to discern. Is my response to that fear, anxiety, like I don't want to because I'm afraid? It's like uncomfortable, it's scary. Or is the body sort of saying no because it kind of knows from a history that this wouldn't be good for me? Or it's saying yes because it kind of knows from a history that it may be uncomfortable, but it's going to be good for you. So for me, the body question is actually a true question to your body. It's not a head one. Because the other part of wisdom in answering questions, or what should I do, or what should I eat, or how much, the other part of wise effort is sourcing wisdom from lots of places. So we can source wisdom from our body, but it's not the only place. There's other places, there's second bodies, there's other people. You have mentors. One of the things that I recommend for folks is to have a genius advisory board. Who are the people that you could go to that are like second bodies to you, that you can use to bounce ideas off of? And there are people that have different geniuses than you. That's another way to get at a wise answer. Another way to get at a wise answer is through actual, just like facts. If you want to be logical about it. Another way to get at a wise answer is people go, to spiritual practice, or to praying to, God, or to reflecting, having a walk with your ancestor that died, right? So there's lots of different avenues into wisdom. The body is one of them. And when psychologists study wisdom, what they really look at is this intersection between the wit, the factual knowledge, the procedural knowledge, all of the information part of it, with the heart. And the heart part is your values and your body and your intuition, which gets a bad rap in clinical science. And I would say is not all bad and is not all good. It's just one part of the picture.
Something that I highlighted more often than healthy for a Kindle was where you explained that wisdom does not come from, I'm going to paraphrase this, so apologies if I don't get the words perfectly right, but the way I remembered it is that wisdom doesn't come from logic and learning, but that it comes from experiencing something, for like long-term exposure of something to have that wisdom. And I thought that was so beautiful because it means that for a lot of things that I'm doing, that my clients are doing, that people that I know are doing, that are inherently difficult or uncomfortable, or they don't have the right answers to their questions yet, the wisdom is built by like staying with that question, staying in doing that thing, and then learning through experience in that task or field or whatever it is, and not to necessarily immediately run to learning more, read another book on something, but putting the behavioral part to the forefront a little bit more and say that in order to build wisdom, you need to be doing things, you need to be present there, you need to be there. Otherwise, wisdom is going to be a little bit too far away.
Yeah, there's sort of the cognitive behavioral, which is wisdom through learning, through books, through reading other people's stuff. And what I have found is that can only take you so far. And for many of us, that's actually where our genius becomes our problem. That would be maybe where my genius becomes my problem, especially self-help junkies, where they're just constantly buying more books, reading more stuff. And then after a while, after you've read enough of these, you start realize that everybody's sort of hovering around some of the same concepts and nothing is ever really new. So actually what I've been doing more of is going back to the things that I already know and practicing them at a deeper level. So that maybe one or two or three concepts, really, really, really deeply living them in my life. But there's another part of wisdom. So there's the cognitive part, there's the behavioral part, but there's a third part of wisdom that I think many of us miss, which is the wisdom of staying open, the wisdom of open-mindedness, the wisdom of I don't know mind. The folks that I'm drawn to are the folks that say they don't know. Like, this is why I love Steve Hayes, because he is willing to blow up his own model over and over and over again. And all the folks that are all like now, like they're stuck on the 6 core processes of ACT. And I go in and I train folks at boot camp, and I come in on day 4, which is where are we going with psychology? What's next? You know, now you've all learned the ACT 6 core processes. What's next is that these processes do not work sometimes. Sometimes mindfulness or being present is not the most effective thing for some people. And that actually, I just interviewed this guy, Jonathan Schooler. He's here at UCSB, and I teach a class with him in the spring on resilience for college students, climate resilience. And his whole field of study is in mind wandering and sort of debunking that, you know, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. We all, know that study. Well, what his research shows is that actually mind wandering is linked to creativity, having an open mind, so much so that he's changing the name of his center from the Center of Mindfulness and Human Potential to the Center for Openness. Because an open mind, which is different than a mindful mind, an open mind, an expansive mind, something that's allows itself to be changed, is true wisdom. That's true wisdom. So yeah, there's a cognitive part, there's a behavioral part, but what I'm more interested in is that sort of like flexible, open willingness to shift and change over time. And how that relates to wise effort is that your wise effort may look very different from moment to moment or season to season of your life. And that's okay. Stay open to that process. I think it's exciting and liberating and it lets you kind of relax a little bit into change, which many of us struggle with.
You know how some people have that superpower of being the greatest gift givers? Well, unfortunately, I am not one of them. Fortunately, though, I discovered Aura frames, and they are the best gift for just about anyone on your list. Aura is a digital picture frame that holds thousands of photos, is incredibly easy to set up, and can be accessed by multiple people from anywhere. So if you are gift giving challenged like me, Aura is here to the rescue. For a limited time, save on this perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code POTC at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code POTC. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast, so order yours now and get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. I don't know about you, but I usually love a good spreadsheet. Unfortunately, they just don't cut it anymore when it comes to managing and organizing our family finances, especially this time of year when things get a little more complicated during the holiday season. That's why I was thrilled to discover Monarch. Monarch does the heavy lifting, linking all your accounts in minutes and even sending alerts when it notices a large or unusual expense. So if you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code OFFTHECLOCK at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code OFFTHECLOCK.
So let's focus then on where wisdom and the genius overlap. And we have the wise effort. Can you give us a high-level overview of what wise effort is and what it's comprised of?
Well, super high level is that wise effort. The term is not mine. It comes from the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. And I actually first learned the word when I was 19 and I was at Thich Nhat Hanh's monastery in France. And we were in this Q&A session. He used to give a Dharma talk. Tai would give a Dharma talk and then answer questions. And one of the person that stood up was a soldier. And I remember this so well. It was during the Iraq War. And I guess he had come here to do this experience of living peacefully at the monastery and asked this question of, now I've been here, I don't want to go back. Like, understandably, once you become aware of something, you don't want to go back into the thing that was maybe toxic for him. And Thich Nhat Hanh's response was, you are exactly the person that I want behind the gun. And that was in the frame of wise effort. And then later on, I was on retreat with Jack Kornfield, and we were talking about this concept, and I kept on circling around like this idea of like, how are we using our energy? How do we use our energy in a way that's aligned with our values? What is that about? And he said, it sounds like wise effort to me. And that's where I was like, boom, that's it. So the wise effort method is the process of that. What does that look like? It has 3 components to it. The first is get curious. The second is open up. And the third is focus your energy. And each one of those components has a lot to it. Like, get curious about your struggle, get curious about your genius, get curious about your values, and then open up. Like, in order to get unstuck and put your energy where you want to put it, you're going to need to open up a few things, like open up your mind, like that openness I was talking about, open up your sense of self to a wiser self, open up to feeling things that maybe are uncomfortable to feel. So then you can focus your energy where you want to focus it in your community, in your work, and your parenting.
So if you're open to it, pun intended, can we take a deep dive into each one of those? I think there's a lot of overlap with ACT. I saw a lot of that specifically in opening up and also in focusing the energy. But you have your own brilliant genius spin on each one of those. Could you walk us through what it in detail entails to become more curious? I find it's easily said, especially in the Western culture, to be more curious. But once you try to look under the hood and ask, like, what does it actually look like to become more curious, then that's where people start to lose where to put their foot next. The overarching principle of getting curious is easily done, but then how does it actually look like seems to stop people somewhat.
I'll give you a real life example. So this last week, I got a call from my kid's school that he has 19 detentions, and that they're going to call him in to like, once you get to 20, that's when you get the DC, and then you're like in big trouble.
DC
And
is prison or?
Practically at this
Okay.
school. My poor kid, he's been in these schools that have like no discipline and practically no grades for all these years. And then he goes to high school. He like got into this like crazy prep high school that's just, they're hardcore. And what they didn't ask him, or what they were not curious about. So he got the 19 detentions because he's been late 19 times. What they did not ask them, or what they did not have, was a process-based lens or a curious mind as to why is this kid, who's a new kid at this school, late 19 times in their first semester. And we can look at it through a process-based lens. And as I do this in chapter 4, where you start to get curious about, okay, what about your biology maybe contributing to your problem? That's something we often forget about, our bodies, our biology. The kid got tackled by a 250-pound senior. He's like 110 pounds wet, and really injured his back in football. First time playing football. So his biology is playing a role. He's also a high school student, and has a biology of a teenage brain and body that doesn't benefit from waking up at 7 a.m. Okay. So if you think about your own problem, anyone that has a struggle and you want to get curious about it, get curious about your biology. How is your biology impacting this? Maybe you're going through perimenopause. Maybe your eating is off. Maybe you keep on drinking that extra glass of wine at dinner, and that's contributing to the fight that you're getting into with your partner in the morning. So the next thing that the school didn't look at, or didn't even ask about, was what may be going on in this kid's home life that may be contributing to him getting late. You know, my husband started a new job that he has to be really early to. I have 2 kids to get to 2 different spots. It's actually his family environment. We moved into this house because our other house had to get torn up, and they are currently replacing the foundation on our house. So workers arrive at my home at 7 a.m. to dig and trench and jackhammer under our house. So there's all this contextual stuff in your family life that may be contributing to getting late. If you think about that for yourself, how are your social relationships or your environment impacting it? And then we can look at your psychology and get curious about your psychology, which is all the stuff that we do with processes and thinking about what feelings, what thoughts are contributing to this. Like all of us, when we're late, we have thoughts like, oh, it doesn't matter this time, I'll get away with it or whatever. But really, it's much more complex. The way that you can understand the complexity of yourself as an individual and a human is really only to get curious about it. But most of us, we put just attentions on ourselves. We just think I'm a bad person because I'm drinking again, or I'll never be able to exercise because I never keep to a 21-day program. But if you take that more contextual, nuanced, complex view on things and really are curious about it, you may uncover that just there's a few threads that you could pull that would have a big impact. And when you pull those threads, then you're engaging in wiser efforts than just the big, I'm bad or he's wrong.
Yeah, beautifully put. Also, I find something that happens to me when I get curious is it brings a levity to a situation. It takes that contracting down to there's a problem to this, what's going on here? This almost playful, childish, what is this? I think I want to credit Judson Brewer for, I think he called it somatic curiosity, where you actually bring up your brows and you go like, what? And to actually do that and to activate like this curiosity bodily sensation of being, what? And it just makes difficult situations just a little bit lighter because there is this, curious mind scanning.
Yeah, we can get curious about ourselves. We can also, Todd Kashdan has done a lot of research in this area too, of how if you're like at a cocktail party and you're in a boring conversation, you actually get curious about the person, how it can transform that conversation from something that's boring to something that is interesting. You want to lean in, you want to know more. And Jed talks about interest curiosity as like not deprivation curiosity, like I want to get the answer to get to the end, but like the question that leads to more and more and more and more questioning. Yeah. And that's really, it's an engaging way to be in the world. And it's rejuvenating in terms of our energy. I think curiosity, the state of curiosity, is an energizing state. It brings us vitality and energy to be curious. rather than the state of, I already know. I do this exercise when I train therapists that I learned from Robin, where on the first day of training, I just did a training in North Carolina. I was like 50 people there. I pulled 5 people up from the crowd to the front.
Mhm.
And I asked the crowd, you've never met these 5 people, who would you want to go to dinner with? Who would you want to fly your airplane if it was going down? Who would you want to be your dog sitter? You can think about
Mhm.
people that you just like going to the grocery store, how
Mhm.
our mind automatically judges people and judges things, right? Another question is like, who of these 5 wouldn't like you?
And
Our
they're
mind,
random strangers. Like, there are people
random
that you
strangers
brought
never
up on
met.
stage that I
Yeah.
just saw that they're in the same workshop with me,
Yeah.
but I don't know them.
We just got there
Yeah.
first day. So you can think about your first team meeting, your first day at work, your first day at kids' first day at school, whatever, your first parent association meeting. How our mind automatically is not curious. It's just, I'm going to put you in this box because it's less metabolically expensive to just stereotype you,
Yeah.
basically. And then how that then would shape the course of how you would interact with this person. And then I go down the line and I pass the mic to each one and I ask them questions like, when was the last time you cried? And they answer that.
Mhm.
And then I ask them, when you wake up in the morning, what's one of the first things you do that's really important to you? And they answer that,
Mhm.
right? And then after answering those questions, that who you want to go to lunch with or who you are afraid, would judge you or who would you want to fly your airplane kind of shifts, right? Because you've actually gotten curious about the human as opposed to just the automatic judgment that we have. And that is wise effort. It takes a little bit of effort to be curious, but then it becomes very energizing once you are curious. And we can do that towards others, but we can also do that towards ourselves because we have all sorts of assumptions about who we are and who we aren't. And we play small because we think we're not that type of person, or we don't ever stretch ourselves in the way that we've,
Mhm.
used to stretch ourselves because we've just gotten in this one track of being.
Then that'd be a segue for me to jump to one story, one anecdote that you tell in your book that I have been pondering all year. And this is the anecdote of you cleaning public toilets and bringing this intention in. Maybe do you want to set us up with that story and how intention goes into that before I throw my my question regarding that at you?
Well, I share a lot in this book about my experience in bathrooms and my own history. But a lot of the lessons that I've learned in Wise Effort have come from being on retreat in my own spiritual practice. I take my kids now to Plum Village in the summers, where I first went when I was 19, and now we go as a family. And one of the things that at the monastery you do is you live the monastic lifestyle. And that includes taking care of the monastery. And you're assigned a working meditation. So pot washing. This last time I was there, I was assigned a cushion rearranging.
Mhm.
Between
Okay.
every single event, I'm like lining up the cushions, right? And a few years ago, we were in the toilet cleaning group. And one of the things that the leader did before we went in to go clean the toilets was to ask ourselves, why are you here? What is your intention? What is it that you want to bring to this? And everyone had a different thing. It's like, I'm here to clean the toilets because I want a fresh place for the kids to brush their teeth. And, I want to do something gross because I need to face my fears around germs. But for me, it was really about changing my relationship with my own self. How could I be of service? How can I think about the actions that I'm taking, even if they're not ones that anyone would put up on their wall or put a frame around or say, congratulations, you cleaned a toilet today, but internally feel the satisfaction of doing good work. And so every single one of those jobs has taught me different things, and I learn about myself in them.
Well, this is definitely a more impactful story than I will have to share about my meeting the idea of intention. We talked about values briefly, and I don't think we have to go into values because our listeners are quite familiar with this. But suffice it to say, I have a bunch of values that I live by, and they're really like guideposts in my life. And there are 2 values that I always seem to not really nail down. They're sort of vague. I replace two of my 6 values like regularly, because I'm still like figuring out which ones will help me the most leading a meaningful life. And at the beginning of this year, I realized that I need to bring intention in as a value. And the reason for that is that living with a disability like I do, time is my most precious resource that I have. And we talked about this in the little snippet of our story in the book. Time is my most precious resource. And I really need to be aware that I don't have as much time during the day as pedestrians, as people not using a wheelchair, not having a neuromuscular disease, because most people don't need 20 minutes to put on shoes, or they don't need like half an hour to get dressed. They just have a lot more time. So Michael needs to be a lot more careful with his time. And I found that like asking myself, what is the intention of me doing something right now? Why am I doing that? Has helped me a lot to clarify and to sort of streamline and make sure that what time I'm using in a meaningful manner. And it got diluted by things like constantly listening to audiobooks or podcasts, which to me made a lot of sense, because when I need like 15 minutes to put on shoes, a way to not deem that time wasted is to play an audiobook or a podcast, so that while I take forever to do a certain physical task, at least I'm still like making use of that time. And that has then led to me seemingly almost wasting time doing things like listening to podcasts incessantly and books and so on, that I've started to ask myself, okay, what's the intention with this? What am I doing? Why am I doing this right now? And what do I want to get out of this? And so this is still something that I'm still like cross-checking, and I still haven't arrived at a clear way of doing that yet, but it's been opening my eyes a little bit to certain things. And the question that I wanted to throw at you in that regard is that, and I hope, by the way, I hope that what I'm talking about here even makes a modicum of sense to you and those listening. To me, intention seems to be something that can be a little bit black and white. Like I'm doing something because I want to get something specific out of it. That's why I'm doing it. And that makes me somewhat rigid as well as I'm doing it. So for example, I might read a book as I'm going to bed, and I decide, okay, I'm going to read a book because my intention here is to unwind and to relax and to get a little bit creative by reading that novel. And then I realize there's something in that novel. Maybe it's a word that I don't know. I want to look it up. There's a reference that I read that I want to kind of check out on the internet and see what that reminds me of and so on. And then I realize that I'm not sure I'm using the right word, but I'm sort of not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to go on the Oxford dictionary to look up that word, because my intention with reading that novel was to relax and not to learn something. And you're smiling at this, but this is not something that's like, I can spend an hour just getting lost, like researching something and then closing my Kindle and be like, yeah, that wasn't relaxing at all, because I got totally sidetracked. And now I have like 15 more words that I need to memorize and learn. And I didn't read a lot of my novel.
Yeah, there's a little bit of genius is your problem here, Michael, where you're trying to hack your own intention or hack your own time or hack your own life, right? To get to the dark side of a meaningful life, where you're like chronically trying to figure out how to maximize the meaning, of something. And intention is in every spiritual tradition, right? And especially in the contemplative traditions, when we get on our yoga mat, we set an intention for our practice. At the end of a meditation, there's a very classic dedication of merit. May the benefits of this practice not just be for me, but to benefit all sentient beings. And so there's a bigger, looser intention. Sometimes our intentions get too narrow. They become inflexible. We need to open up our intention more to just, may this benefit my well-being. May this be a good use of my energy, right? And not being flexible. And what I find folks doing is, especially with time, is they think they don't have enough time. So they speed everything up, and they come into my office and they want to get right to the point, and they want to use their 15 minutes, and they listen to their audiobooks on 2 times the speed. There's this great poem by Rupi Kaur called Productivity Anxiety. productivity anxiety. And she says in it, oh my God, I wrote it down the other day because it was so good. This productivity anxiety that everyone is working harder than me. I'm going to be left behind because I'm not working fast enough, long enough. I'm wasting my time. And then later on, she said that isn't the dream to have what I have, to be in this, right? To have a book, to be able to read a book before bed, to be able to go down the rabbit hole of the Oxford Dictionary, and loosening up maybe a little bit of that energy so that you don't feel it's the pressure around time that makes us feel like we have less time in some ways. But we know that the perception of time is completely a perception. 1 minute can seem like forever when you're waiting for your teapot to boil. And then 1 minute can just be fleeting. But the way that I see intention showing up is living more from sort of your heart space and not so much from your head space of trying to figure it out. And that's kind of the sense that I'm getting of you, is that you get a little heady about things, Michael.
Yeah. Diana, whenever we talk, we seem to arrive at this point that I'm using my head too much and you remind me to use my heart more. So once again, I thank you for that insight and all of your wisdom and the amazing work that you do and for spending time with me and chat with me about said work. So thank you so much for making the time, and tell our listeners where they can find more about you if they're not already following you, which they should totally do.
wiseeffort.com is the best place. And I am now really interested in helping therapists develop wiser efforts, get out of their turtleneck sweaters and the boxes that they put themselves in, and get into using their genius more, doing what they want to do, and not just what they should do. And so I have a whole program called The Business of Therapy, which is walking you through the wise effort method as a therapist. And we have a next cohort in February. So I hope people will join me there. You can learn more about it. And then you can also get that energy audit that I mentioned, which is a really fun little workbook. That's at wiseeffort.com, drdianehill.com. They all go to the same space.
Beautiful. Diana, thank you so much. Always good seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock. You can now listen to our podcast ad-free by becoming a supporter on Patreon. You can link to Patreon on our website or go to patreon.com/offtheclocksite.
If you enjoy our podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review and sharing this episode with a friend or an enemy who would enjoy it.
You can get more psychology tips by subscribing to our fabulous newsletter on Substack. Or if you're still addicted to social media, find us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
We'd like to thank our rockstar production manager, Jadine Stout-Williams.
Now for the boring part. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you're looking for mental health treatment, please visit the resources page of our website, offtheclockpsych.com.